The House will come to order. Announcement by the Speaker.
Announced by the Speaker, a message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House File number 1883.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. There's a copy of this order of business online. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading House File number 3230.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 3398.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 3625.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 4067.
Second reading. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate files herewith transmitted. Senate file numbers 3435 and 3589. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
First reading of Senate file number 3435, an act relating to real estate. Hewitt moved that Senate file number 3435 and House file number 3341, now on the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered.
First reading Senate file number 3589, an act relating to financial institutions. Elkins moved that Senate file number 3589 and House file number 4067, now on the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered. Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Winkler from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Tuesday, May 12, 2020, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. House file numbers 4645, 4285, 4602, 627, 4429, and 4605, Senate file number 3072, and House file number 4137. Announcement, Winkler from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Wednesday, May 13th, 2020, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. Senate file numbers 4073 and 2466, House file number 4601, Senate file number 3357, House file number 4490 and 4599, and Senate files 3560 and 3298.
Before we proceed with the calendar for the day, we will revert to the clerk taking the roll. We will take the roll for members who are in a different location than they were with this morning's roll call. So a reminder for members on the phone, if you can get prepared to be responsive when your name is called as we go in alphabetical order. State your name, state your city, and present.
Acom.
Acom, St. Paul, present.
Acom, St. Paul, present. Albright.
Albright, Prior Lake, present.
Albright, Prior Lake, present. Anderson.
Anderson, Steel Barsness Township, present.
Anderson, Steel Parsons Township, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Bonner.
Bonner, St. Paul, present.
Bonner, St. Paul, present. Barr. Barr, St. Paul, present. Baker. Baker, St. Paul, present. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, St. Paul, present.
Becker, Finn, St. Paul, present. Bennett.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present.
Bennett, Albert Lee, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present.
Bernardi, St. Paul, present. Bierman.
Bierman, St. Paul, present.
Bierman, St. Paul, present. Bow. Bow, St. Paul, present. Brand.
Brand, St. Paul, present.
Brand, St. Paul, present. Cantrell.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present.
Cantrell, St. Paul, present. Carlson A.
Carlson A., St. Paul, present.
Carlson A., St. Paul, present. Carlson L.
Carlson L., St. Paul, present.
Carlson, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, St. Paul, present.
Christensen, St. Paul, present. Claflin.
Claflin, St. Paul, present.
Claflin, St. Paul, present. Considine.
Considine, Mankato, present.
Considine, Mankato, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Faribault, present.
Daniels, Faribault, present. Doubt. Doubt, St. Paul, present. Davids. David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Dean.
Dean, St. Paul, present.
Dean, St. Paul, present. Damath.
Damath, Cold Spring, present.
Damath, Cold Spring, present. Detmer. Detmer, St. Paul, present. Drazkowski.
Kraskowski, Winona, present.
Drazkowski, Winona, present. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, St. Paul, present.
Edelson, St. Paul, present. Elkins.
Elkins, St. Paul, present.
Elkins, St. Paul, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Fabian.
Fabian Roseau, present.
Fabian Roseau, present. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Franson. Franzen.
Branson, Alexandria Township, present.
Franzen, Alexandria Township, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, St. Paul, present.
Freiberg, St. Paul, present. Garofalo. Garofalo.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present. Gomez.
Gomez, St. Paul, present.
Gomez, St. Paul, present. Green. Green, St. Paul, present. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Grunhagen. Grunhagen, St. Paul, present. Gunther.
Gunther, Fairmont, present.
Gunther, Fairmont, present. Haley.
Haley, Red Wing, present.
Haley, Red Wing, present. Halverson.
Halverson, St. Paul, present.
Halverson, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present.
Hamilton, Mountain Lake, present. Hanson.
Hanson, St. Paul, present.
Hanson, St. Paul, present. Hassan.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present.
Hassan, Minneapolis, present. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, Anoka, present.
Heinrich, Anoka, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present.
Heinzman, Nisswa, present. Herr.
Her, St. Paul, present.
Herr, St. Paul, present. Hertos.
Hertos, Maple Grove, present.
Hertos, Maple Grove, present. Hornstein.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, St. Paul, present.
Howard, St. Paul, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Johnson. Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present.
Jurgens, Cottage Grove, present. Keel.
Keel, Hammond Township, present.
Keel, Hammond Township, present. Cleveland.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present.
Cleveland, St. Paul, present. Cagle.
Cagle, St. Paul, present.
Cagle, St. Paul, present. Katiza-Wattoon.
Katiza-Wattoon, St. Paul, present.
Katiza-Wattoon, St. Paul, present. Cosnick.
Cosmic, Lakeville, present.
Cosnick, Lakeville, present. Creeshaw.
Grisha.
Creeshaw.
Grisha. Grisha. Grisha.
Okay, where are you?
Oh, Grisha, Little Falls.
Creeshaw, Little Falls, present. Kunish-Padine.
Kunish-Podine, St. Paul, present.
Kunish-Padine, St. Paul, present. Lehman.
Lehman, Cohasset, present.
Lehman, Cohasset, present. Lee.
Lee, Minneapolis, present.
Lee, Minneapolis, present. Lesh.
Lesh, St. Paul, present.
Lesh, St. Paul, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lean.
Lean, Moorhead, present.
Lean, Moorhead, present. Lillie. Lillie, St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, St. Paul, present.
Lippert, St. Paul, present. Listlegard.
Listlegard, St. Paul, present.
Listlegard, St. Paul, present. Long.
Long, St. Paul, present.
Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero. Lucero, St. Paul, present. Lewick.
Lewick, Aiken, present.
Lewick, Aiken, present. Mahoney.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present.
Mahoney, St. Paul, present. Mann.
Mann, St. Paul, present.
Mann, St. Paul, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Markwart.
Markwart, Dilworth, present.
Markwart, Dilworth, present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul, present. McDonald.
McDonald, present. Lee and Delano.
McDonald, Delano, present. Mecklin.
Macklin, Clear Lake, present.
Mecklin, Clear Lake, present. Miller. Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller.
Moeller, St. Paul, present.
Moeller, St. Paul, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, St. Paul, present.
Morrison, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present. Murphy.
Murphy, Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown, present. Nash.
Nash, Waconia, present.
Nash, Waconia, present. Nelson M. Nelson M. St. Paul, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N., Clover Township, present.
Nelson N. Clover Township, present. New.
New, North Branch, present.
New, North Branch, present. Nor.
Nor, Minneapolis, present.
Nor, Minneapolis, present. Nornis.
Nornis, Fergus Falls, present.
Nornis, Fergus Falls, present. Novotny.
Novotny, Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, present. Sartell.
O'Driscoll, Sartell, present. Olson.
Olson, St. Paul, present.
Olson, St. Paul, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Purcell.
Purcell, Bemidji, present.
Purcell, Bemidji, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Waseca, present.
Petersburg, Waseca, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poppy.
Poppy, St. Paul, present.
Poppy, St. Paul, present. Poston. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, St. Paul, present.
Pryor, St. Paul, present. Quam.
Quam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Runbeck.
Runback, Circle Pines, present.
Runbeck, Circle Pines, present. Sandell.
Sandell, St. Paul, present.
Sandell, St. Paul, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present. Sauk. Sauk.
Sauk, Rochester, present.
Sauk, Rochester, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth, present. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover, present. Stephenson. Stephenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski. Swazinski, St. Paul, present. Tabke.
Tabke, St. Paul, present.
Tabke, St. Paul, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Cloud, present.
Tice, St. Cloud, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, Hanska, present.
Torkelson, Hanska, present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present.
Erdahl, Acton Township, present. Vang.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present.
Vang, Brooklyn Center, present. Vogel.
Vogel, Elko Newmarket, present.
Vogel, Elko Newmarket, present. Wagenius.
Wagenius, Minneapolis, present.
Wagenius, Minneapolis, present. Waslowick.
Woslowick, St. Paul, present.
Woslowick, St. Paul, present. West.
West St. Paul present.
West, St. Paul, present. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Wagamot.
Wagamot St. Paul present.
Wagamot, St. Paul, present. Zhang J.
Zhang J, St. Paul present.
Zhang J, St. Paul, present. Zhang T.
Zhang T, St. Paul present.
Zhang T, St. Paul, present. Joachim.
Joachim, St. Paul, present.
Joachim, St. Paul, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present.
A quorum is still present. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2768. The clerk will report the bill.
File number 2768, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state government, ratifying labor contracts and compensation plans, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, the author of the bill, Representative Lillie, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill ratifies the labor contracts and compensation plans for our state employees and the executive branch workers for Minnesota. These contracts and plans are for the FY 20 and 21 biennium and are effective retroactively to July 1st, 2019. Specific terms, there's some documents that have been provided to all members, and you can find those on your emails, but I'll just kind of give an overview at a higher level here. A 2.25 increase in salaries effective January 1st, 2019, and 2.5 in July of 1st of this year. And there's also been some negotiation in the insurance benefits. It's a major component, obviously, of labor contracts. And so most of the contract, these have not really changed, the healthcare, but the copay has changed, and some of the deductibles have changed. These are the state workers from all over the state, you know, from one end to the other, from the VA up on Silver Bay, all the way to inspectors down in Worthington and Wilmer and all over our state, healthcare inspectors and food inspectors. Many of the nurses that are frontline workers in our VA homes, and epidemiologists, I can't say that word. But anyways, Indeed workers and insurance workers, many of the state workers around the state, these raises are reasonable. They've, on last year's budgets that we passed here at the legislature, these numbers were included in those budgets. Just so you know, wages make up about 7% of our total budget, which is about $488 billion, I guess, all told, but 7% of that is wages. And many of these workers, as you know, I mean, I'm sure you've been getting letters from some of the workers around the state, and the last couple of years, you know, we've lost correction workers that were murdered or whatever out in the Stillwater area, but these are tough jobs. I heard a great story. I'm just going to give you a quick story about a 911 worker. Just the other day I was reading it, and he had saved a life. Some guy was driving up 35 going to Duluth, and he was driving at 100, and this 911 worker was able to talk the gentleman to the side of the road and to the safe to the end. And so we know that you know, every day we all watch the governor and see his you know, the reports, and we hear that, you know, through the papers and the newspapers. But we know that these our state workers are keeping us safe and healthy. They're our team, and these contracts were negotiated in good faith, and so they were you know, the world has changed a little bit, and I'm sure in our next budgets we'll see some changes related to these type of things. But again, these were negotiated in good faith, and they're part of our team, and they're out there doing good work. And I think we could be pretty proud of our state workers, and I think a good way to show that is by passing this bill today. I stand for questions.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 2768.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Representative Considine would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am happy to support this bill. Our public employees provide all the services that define our civilization, whether it's food inspection, wastewater, clean drinking water, firemen, policemen, the people that man the walls at the prisons. They are the people that provide our civilization. And in the current crisis, they have been the backbone to our response. Many of them are going into work on a regular basis in harm's way, sacrificing their health potentially to make sure that we are getting the services and the things that the state needs on a regular basis. Again, I am proud to support this bill. Thank you.
The member from Carlton, Representative Sundin.
Carlton County. Thank you, Chair Hartman. In Carlton County, we have a couple of facilities here that protect the public from some of the worst citizens that Minnesota has seen. And I'd like to share a couple stories about the people that serve in those in that prison setting in Moose Lake. Here's Jim. He's a correction officer. He's been ill with COVID-19 for 3 weeks now. He contracted it at work. That's the assumption. And he's eager to go back to work as soon as he can because he views his job as a critical part of society. We have Karen. She's a nurse in that facility. She's actually living in her basement when she does go home just to protect her family from possible exposure from the COVID-19. We have Tom. Tom is a CO long time in Moose Lake Prison. He shared a story with me about shopping with his family one day in a department store, and he recognized one of the offenders that he had trouble with in the past, and he literally shoved his wife and family into the clothing racks to protect them from this guy. It turns out there was actually no threat at that point, but this guy had been dangerous before. These are some of the things that these people go through on a daily basis. And I don't know if there's any amount of money that can compensate them for the paranoia they might have to live with. There's Lee. Lee was a maintenance worker in the prison, and he recognized what was going on with the diseases and the exposure to some of these people. And he actually pulled the plug, quit his job, went back to construction. There's no amount of money that made it worth it for him to go to work and expose his family to these dangers. And a close personal friend of mine, Brad, he had 2 years to go to full retirement. He was exposed. He was laid off for 3 weeks. Good for Brad. He did not come down with COVID-19 virus, and I'm happy for him. But he realized his mortality, and he did not go back to work. So that was a labor drain for the state of Minnesota. We lost an experienced correction officers. There's no amount of money that would actually compensate a person for the risks that they go through from time to time in those settings. But this is a good start. These contracts are a good start. They're negotiated in good faith, and we should support them with the good pay for these workers. Thank you.
The member from Dakota, Representative Claflin.
Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak briefly because public employees go to work every day to serve Minnesotans. They keep us safe, they ensure we have clean air and water, they are responding to the pandemic, and they do many unseen jobs behind the scenes that keep Minnesota working. They are creative problem solvers, and they are dedicated professionals. Passing this contract is a gesture that shows that we respect the work that is being done by our public employees. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson M.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, as has already been stated, these are the people that keep our state running. In this time of pandemic, many of them have stepped up and taken on jobs that weren't part of their, or taken on duties that weren't part of their jobs originally, like the many workers that have gone over and helped answer phones at the unemployment office. With the crush of people getting laid off and furloughed from their jobs, these people have stepped up into jobs that aren't part of their job description and are helping these people who are to get their unemployment so that they can continue feeding their families, paying their mortgages, and all those things that go on. As was also stated, these are contracts that were negotiated in good faith. And they shouldn't be punished now that this pandemic has gone on, because these are the people that work hard and are stepping up and making sure our state continues operating the way it should. And we talked about, these are the nurses and the doctors at the VA. These are the researchers in our colleges and our universities that are looking for a vaccine for this pandemic that's out here now. So members, it is time that we step up and honor these people to make sure that they get paid what they're worth. They get paid the amount that they negotiated. This is part of what we should be doing as a state. So members, please vote yes on this bill.
The member from St. Louis, Representative Olson.
Madam Speaker, today I am speaking in support of House File 2768. Our state employees provide excellent, essential services for the people of Minnesota. They deserve fair compensation. It's time for the legislature to ratify the contracts that were negotiated in good faith and have been in place for several months. These are employees like Stephanie on the case investigation team at MDH, who's handling isolation and quarantine and following up with our healthcare workers to ensure we have a healthy workforce in our hospitals, clinics, long-term care settings, group homes, and many other places. These are people like Melinda at Deed, who asked her boss if she could do more to help out during the pandemic and is now processing unemployment insurance claims through the call center in St. Paul, and daily gets thanked with tears of appreciation with how grateful people are to talk with her. Or these are people like Joshua, a corrections officer, who in order to keep his family safe has been sleeping in a fish house in his driveway. He has 3 small children at home, ages 4, 2, and 9 months. His only interactions with them have been waving from 6 feet apart. And his daughter doesn't understand why daddy won't hug me. Since April 11th, he has worked 13 overtime shifts on top of his 20 regular scheduled shifts. These are the people that are caring for all of us right now, and we need to do our jobs and take care of them. I will be casting my vote in support of House File 2768, and I ask members for their yes vote as well. Thank you.
Representative Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I really appreciate our opportunity to hear this bill and show some respect for our team, for our state workers, and with that, I'd ask for a green vote today.
The member from Isanti, the Minority Leader, Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Thank you, Representative Lillie, for bringing this bill forward. This is something we do sometimes every year, sometimes every other year, depending on how the contracts fall and when our approval comes. But our legislative approval is a step in the process. And we are in unique times. Obviously, everybody's functioning a little bit differently. I want to thank each and every one of our state employees, without exception. Some of them are working from home remotely on things that have nothing to do with COVID right now, bizarrely like the rest of us are. Some of them are on the front lines. But regardless of what they're working on, I want to thank each and every one of them for the work that they do for our state, and we certainly appreciate them. Normally, when the contracts come up, as a legislative leader particularly, but I think even as a legislator, our email inboxes get filled with emails from state employees saying, please, please, please ratify our contracts. Please don't let this become political. Please, please, please. And without fail, we usually do. I can count on one hand the number of emails I've gotten this year, because I think Minnesota's state employees understand the situation that our state is in. Our stay-at-home order started on March 27th. We're in our 46th day of our stay-at-home order, the 8th week. Many businesses, including restaurants, were closed by executive order on March 17th. So we're on our 56th day and our 9th week. At the end of February, our state was facing a projected $1.5 billion surplus. We found out last week that we now have a $2.5 billion deficit. And right now, 640,000 Minnesotans have filed for unemployment. 640,000 Minnesotans have filed for unemployment. While this pay raise was negotiated, these contracts were negotiated before all of this happened, I think state employees understand that we're all in this together. And had we passed these last session, this wouldn't have even been a discussion. But right now, our state faces a $2.5 billion deficit. And 640,000 Minnesotans are out of work. Think about that for a second. That's between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 Minnesotans is out of work and out of the workforce. So not only do we not have the money, I think it's incredibly insensitive to bring a bill to the House floor giving every state employee a pay raise, not only in the past, but this bill also gives a pay raise on July 1st, another pay raise. What do we tell to the Minnesotans that are out of work? Do we tell them we're all in this together? Does this bill say to Minnesotans that we're all in this together? Once again, I want to thank every state employee for the work that they do. We couldn't do what we do without our state employees. I'm very thankful for you. This has nothing to do with that. This literally is about our world getting turned upside down. And we are all in this together. There is no question. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that since this started. We're all in this together. It's a common hashtag on social media. We're all in this together. Unfortunately, since we got the bad news of our $2.5 billion surplus, Democrats have brought bills to the floor last week to spend another $200 million of money we don't have. On Saturday, they passed a bill to take money from the TANF fund, which has a structural deficit in it, to give a bonus to welfare recipients. And today, They're bringing a bill to approve state employee contracts with pay raises that unfortunately we cannot afford. And believe me, I wish we could. I wish we weren't in this situation. I was told, you know, I hope that we could just pass these contracts and not politicize them. I actually think that by bringing them to the floor for a vote when we can't afford them is politicizing them. The fact that state employees are not emailing right now saying, hey, you know, I know that, you know, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 Minnesotans is out of work right now, but I really hope you can give me that pay raise that starts on July 1st. State employees are not saying that. And this is not a partisan issue, and this is not politics. But we should not be giving false hope to state employees. What we should be saying is thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you do for this state. And we are all in this together. My hope is that they can renegotiate these contracts, and I think everybody thinks it's reasonable that they get to keep the raise that they got on July 1st of last year. But this state cannot afford to give an across-the-board pay increase to these state employees that will put Minnesotans on the hook for $1 billion over the next 3 years. That's the kind of money we're talking about, $1 billion over the next 3 years. We do not have the money. So Democrats, please open your eyes to what situation that we're in right now. It's not your fault. It's not anybody's fault. But we cannot put our heads in the sand and pretend like this does not exist. We cannot continue on business as usual, pretending like money that's not coming in is going to come in magically somehow. And I, in good conscience, cannot tell the 640,000 Minnesotans that are out of work right now that we're all in this together and vote to give state employees a 2.5% raise starting on July 1st. That is a slap in the face to the 20 or 25% of Minnesotans that are unemployed right now. The highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. And Democrats bring a bill to give pay raises to state employees. We should be working with the governor to open this state up safely. The governor's emergency powers end in 2 days. Are we ready to help him govern this state and open it up safely? Are we ready? Or are we going to keep bringing bills like this that we can't afford, that give false hope to state employees, and are a slap in the face to every Minnesotan who's out of work right now? We need to choose what our priorities are. And I think by our actions, we need to send a message to Minnesotans that we are all in this together. So state employees, thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you do for the citizens of this state. And we are all in this together. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the pandemic has shown the importance of a functioning government that cares for people. Minnesotans are keeping our state running, safeguarding our public health, teaching our children, keeping our lights on, our food safe, our water clean, our parks open, and so much more. Minnesotans are coming together to keep our communities safe, and that is why now is the time to invest in them and in a better future for all of us. Minnesota has the resources we need to address this crisis. We just need the will to act. We can't solve every problem, but we should be doing everything we can to provide economic security and resources for as many Minnesotans as we possibly can. We need our resources focused on providing the essential services Minnesotans need, ensuring we're doing everything we can to defeat COVID-19 and avoiding the short-term thinking that damages our state and our economy. During this crisis, we are proud to have passed workers' compensation for frontline responders, grants for child care providers, funding to assist those dealing with food insecurity, funding to assist the homeless and those struggling with housing, and much more. On Saturday in the House, we passed a number of measures that would improve economic security for Minnesotans, including compensation for hourly school employees, assistance for working families on MFIP, $100 million in housing assistance for homeowners, renters, and landlords, temporary wage increases for personal care attendants who care for the most vulnerable Minnesotans, $55 million in emergency loans for small businesses, and $20 million in broadband to help connect students for distance learning, and Minnesotans to the workforce. Today, we have another chance to do something to help Minnesotans, many of whom are on the front line of this crisis. Our state employees provide excellent, essential services for the people of Minnesota. They deserve fair compensation. It's time for the legislature to ratify the contracts that were negotiated in good faith and have been in place for several months. Our state employees provide essential services before this crisis, and now they're adjusting and delivering even more. During this economic crisis, we should protect these essential services and the basic economic security of the people we're asking to step in and serve all of us. People like Teresa, who is a nurse at the St. Peter Forensic Mental Health Campus. She says, "My peers and I are working on the front lines during this pandemic crisis without any hazard pay, and now there has been talk about not passing our contract. These contracts were bargained in good faith, and we need the legislature to act on behalf of state workers in Minnesota." People like Charlotte, who is a nurse who works the night shift at the Veterans Home in Fergus Falls and has for 18 years, working hard to make sure our veterans are safe. Charlotte said, "We are the ones who see them, talk to them, and care for them on a daily basis. Please respect us and the care we provide our aging heroes." Staff at St. Cloud State has started the Huskies Food Pantry. They started in January. They've had 845 visits since it opened, but 700 of those visits have been since the pandemic started. They're out there helping students in need while risking their own health. Ashley is the Director of Development for the College of Science and Engineering at Mankato State. She said, "Without our work, more students would be at risk of not continuing their education. They wouldn't have access to emergency funds to cover basic needs such as food and shelter. If fundraisers weren't out doing our work, a generation of students would lose their dreams of a quality and affordable education, and the state of Minnesota would lose an educated workforce that is desperately needed to lead the nation through times such as this." People like Lorraine at Minute, so the state IT department, not what you would think of as being on the front line in the COVID epidemic, but what she is doing at Minute is working with the team at the Department of Veterans Affairs to help make sure that veterans who are applying for state COVID assistance online are actually able to get those services met. People like Ken at the Department of Human Services, who works at the care facility in St. Peter while his wife is in Gilbert, where they moved after he retired. Ken says that his wife's health conditions make her vulnerable to COVID-19. So when I go back to Gilbert to visit her, I plan to stay in our camper to make sure she's safe and we're social distancing. It's hard being away from my wife, but I know that I have something to offer and I want to be of assistance. Social distancing and limited recreation opportunities mean more people are turning to the state's parks and waterways. One park employee in southeastern Minnesota said the parks and trails have been as busy in early May as they typically are in the middle of the summer. Sales for fishing licenses are way up, and state employees are processing these licenses and working in the parks to ensure smooth operations during unusually busy and challenging times. Finally, I think we should all take note that the state workers who are working in this Capitol every day are keeping it clean, making sure that our floor sessions are possible. All over the state, cleaning, sanitation, and maintenance workers are taking care of public infrastructure. I think that we're all proud of these employees. I think that we all believe they deserve our respect and appreciation. But now is not the time to go after those employees that we're counting on and go after the contracts that they have fairly bargained for. Layoffs and wage cuts are not going to help the economy. Nobody is going to be helped by more people making less money. We need to maintain our focus on economic security and critical investments like our state workforce, not an austerity mindset that doesn't help anyone. We owe it to those who keep our state running, even during a pandemic, to follow through on our promises to them and their families. As a state, we've banked savings already. Layoffs have begun. Our state colleges are laying off staff. We have a hiring freeze on non-essential employees. all of which saves money. Additional cuts will devastate families and not save us very much. The numbers are actually very simple. For the remainder of this contract, the one-time wage increase totals about $90 million. But as part of that same good faith negotiation process, they also agreed to increase their health care contributions by $36 million. So the net cost increase of the raise that we have been hearing about is actually $58 million. Now that is a large amount of money by any means, but it is certainly nothing like $1 billion. That is just false information. The cost of the increase that we're talking about is $58 million. And I think it's important for us to remember a few facts. First of all, this is not a contract that the legislature negotiates. We don't decide whether or not we like some parts of it or not. We have already appropriated the money to pay for these contracts. The money is in the budget. We've already appropriated and spent it. We decided on the amount of money last year. The unions and MMB have negotiated the contracts as a result. If in future years we decide that these budgets need to be cut because we can't afford them due to the economic consequences, we will then change the amount of the appropriation, and the unions and MMB will renegotiate the contracts. Our job is to decide how much money is in the pot. Their job is to decide what's in the contract. That's what they have done, and it's our job to take that up. It's been 18 years since the legislature refused to ratify state contracts. That's through the Great Recession, that's through other significant recessions and small recessions. 18 years since we didn't ratify a contract. And when we did it last, it was 2002. The issue was not finances, it was same-sex partner benefits. That was why the 2002 legislature rejected the contract. That tells us not only how far our politics have come on that important issue, it also tells us that year in and year out, the legislature has stood by the public employees that we have assigned to do the work. That's what we need to do again today. Finally, members, I would ask, in a deficit year, in a budget of $50 billion in the general fund, is the first $58 million that we would cut, the money that would come directly out of the hands of nurses and epidemiologists and corrections officers? It seems to me that that should not be the first $58 million we pull out of this budget, and that's why we should approve this contract today. We have the resources, the people, and the talent to face this crisis. We just need the will to act. During this economic crisis, we should protect these essential services and the basic economic security of the people we're asking to step in and serve all of us. Now is not the time to turn our backs on them. Now is the time to invest in them and in a better future for all of us. I ask for a yes vote.
The clerk will take the roll. For members on the phone, please state your name and your vote.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Anderson.
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Backer.
Backer, no.
Backer, no. Bonner.
Aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, no. Baker. Baker, no. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, yes.
Becker Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, no.
Bennett, no. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow. Bow, no. Brand. Brand.
Brand, aye.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson, L, aye.
Carlson, L, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Claflin.
Claflin, aye.
Claflin, aye. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels, no. Doubt. Doubt, no. Davids. Davids, no. Davney.
Dabney, aye.
Davney, aye. Dean.
Dean, aye.
Dean, aye. Damath.
Damath, no.
Damath, no. Detmer. Detmer, no. Driscowski.
Truskowski, no.
Truskowski, no. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund, aye. Edelson.
Edelson, aye.
Edelson, aye. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins, aye. Erickson.
Erickson, no.
Erickson, no. Fabian.
Fabian, no.
Fabian, no. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Franzen.
Franson, no.
Franzen, no. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg, aye. Garofalo.
Garofalo votes no.
Garofalo, no. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Green. Green, no. Grossel.
Grossel, nay.
Grossel, no. Gruenhagen. Gruenhagen, no. Gunther.
Gunther, no.
Gunther, no. Haley.
Haley, no.
Haley, no. Halverson.
Halverson, aye.
Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton, no. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson, aye. Hassan.
Hassan, aye.
Hassan, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich, no. Heinzman.
Heinzman, no.
Heinzman, no. Herr.
Her, yes.
Herr, aye. Hertas.
Hertas, no.
Hertas, no. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard, aye. Hewitt.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt, aye. Johnson. Johnson, no. Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Jurgens.
Jurgens, no.
Jurgens, no. Keel.
Keel, no.
Keel, no. Cleavorn.
Cleavorn, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Cagle.
Cagle, aye.
Cagle, aye. Katiza Wattoon.
Katiza Wattoon, aye.
Katiza Wattoon, aye. Kosnick.
Cosmic, no.
Kosnick, no. Kresha.
Krisha, no.
Kresha, no. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, aye.
Kunish Podine, aye. Lehman.
Lehman, no.
Lehman, no. Lee.
Lee, aye.
Lee, aye. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, aye.
Liebling, aye. Lean.
Lean, aye.
Lean, aye. Lillie. Lillie, aye. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert, aye. Lislegard.
Lislegard, aye.
Lislegard, aye. Long.
Long, aye.
Long, aye. Lucero. Lucero, no. Lewick.
Lewick, no.
Lewick, no. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney, aye. Mann.
Man, aye.
Mann, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Marquardt.
Marquardt, no.
Marquardt, no. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald, no. Mecklin.
Macklin, nay.
Mecklin, no. Miller. Miller, no. Moeller.
Moeller, aye.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Morrison. Morrison. Munson.
Munson, no.
Munson, no. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, no.
Nash, no. Nelson M. Nelson M, aye. Nelson N.
Nelson N, no.
Nelson N, no. New.
New, no.
New, no. Noor.
Nor, aye.
Noor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis, no.
Nornis, no. Novotny.
Novotny, no.
Novotny, no. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, no.
O'Driscoll, no. Olson.
Olson, aye.
Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill, no. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, no.
Petersburg, no. Pearson.
Pearson, no.
Pearson, no. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, aye.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, no.
Poston, no. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Guam, no.
Quam, no. Richardson.
Richardson, I.
Richardson, I. Robbins. Robbins, no. Runbeck.
Runbeck, no.
Runbeck, no. Sandell.
Sandell, I.
Sandell, I. Sandsted.
Sandsted, I.
Sandsted, I. Sauk. Sauk. Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Schultz.
Schultz, I.
Schultz, I. Scott.
Scott, no.
Scott, no. Stephenson. Stephenson, I. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, I. Swazinski. Swazinski, no. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, I. Tice.
Tice, no.
Tice, no. Torkelson.
Torkelson, no.
Torkelson, no. Erdahl.
Erdahl, no.
Erdahl, no. Vang.
Vang, I.
Vang, I. Vogel.
Vogel, no.
Vogel, no. Wagenius.
Wagenius, I.
Wagenius, I. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, I.
Wozlowick, I. West.
West, no.
West, no. Winkler. Winkler, I. Walgamot.
Wolgamott, I.
Walgamot, I. Zhang J.
Zhang J, aye.
Zhang J, I. Zhang T.
Zhang T, I.
Zhang T, I. Joachim.
Joachim, I.
Joachim, I. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, I. Morrison.
Morrison, I.
Morrison, I. Sauk.
Sauk, yes.
Sauk, I.
There being 74 ayes and 60 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4502. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4502, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to energy, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from Anoka, the author of the bill, Representative Stephenson, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, House File 4502 is the Energy Conservation and Optimization Act, or ECO. It modernizes and expands Minnesota's highly successful Conservation Improvement Program, or SIP. SIP is one of the nation's leading energy conservation programs. To date, this program has saved enough energy to power 100,000 homes annually. It has provided $6 billion in net benefits and supports 45,000 local jobs in every corner of the state. But SIP hasn't been significantly updated since it was passed in 2007, and the energy landscape in our state has changed significantly in that time. It's a big bill, but at a high level, this bill expands SIP to allow for energy savings that can be realized through load management and fuel switching, completes the transition from a program based on energy conservation spending to one based on actual energy savings. It increases the conservation goal for our investor-owned utilities. It doubles the support available to low-income customers of investor-owned utilities. And it provides regulatory flexibility to our co-ops and munis. The other really significant aspect of this bill is the incredible coalition that supports it. It has the support of all of Minnesota's investor-owned utilities, Xcel, Minnesota Power, and Otter Tail Power, as well as the co-ops, munis, and G&Ts. Every single electric utility in the state supports this bill. It's also supported by the state's largest natural gas utility, CenterPoint Energy. It's supported by the clean energy community. It has the support of consumer advocacy groups, such as the Citizens Utility Board. It has the support of labor unions, such as IBEW Local 292. And it has the support of business groups, such as the Minnesota Mechanical Contractors Association and the National Electrical Contractors Association, as well as some of the leading members of our corporate community. Incredibly, I haven't even listed all of the organizations that support this bill. While this coalition is huge, it's important to note that not everyone supports the bill. And I'm trying to listen to those who haven't supported yet and trying to address their concerns. I know that one group that has expressed some concerns is the propane industry. I've heard propane argue that the fuel switching provision in the bill will harm them. I've heard them say that fuel switching will also be bad for Minnesota because according to them, propane is cheaper and cleaner than Minnesota's electrical supply. Well, I have great news for them. This bill is fuel neutral. It doesn't prefer one fuel to another. Fuel switching is only allowed if the switch saves money and decreases emissions. If propane really is cheaper and cleaner, it won't be eligible for a switch to electricity under this bill. A bill this significant and lengthy requires the help of many, many people to get to the floor, and I want to specifically thank our incredible nonpartisan staff who have worked very hard under incredibly difficult circumstances to make this bill happen, including our great Energy House researcher, Bob Eliff, who went far and above the call of duty on this bill. Also, Mike Malzahn, whose guidance and support has been invaluable. Also want to thank my legislative partners on the bill. Representative Eklund has been just a phenomenal partner on this bill, but also Senator Rarick, who's carrying the bill in the Senate, and Representative Long, who carried the forerunner of this bill last year. Last, I want to address the question of why now. Some might be wondering why we are considering this bill now while we're attempting to contain the pandemic and respond to an economic crisis. Well, as I mentioned before, SIP provides billions of dollars of net benefits and supports thousands of jobs. We expect that this bill will result in more investment and more jobs. We also expect it will help millions of Minnesotans to save money on their energy bills. I know some have raised concerns that increasing the investor-owned utility goal to 1.75% will increase costs for consumers, but that is absolutely not the case. The data shows that all of Minnesota's investor-owned utilities have hit the 1.75% goal for each of the last several years. In fact, the investor-owned utilities often achieve savings north of 2%. Indeed, energy conservation is a significant reason why, even though Minnesota's electrical rates have risen in recent years, the electrical bills that our residential customers actually pay are still below the national average. In fact, a 2019 report by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory showed that energy efficiency programs are the cheapest way to meet electric demand. And another study shows that energy efficiency generates $4 of value for consumers for each dollar invested. In sum, this bill will save consumers money and create jobs. Thank you.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Baker moves to amend House File Number 4502, the first engrossment as follow. The amendment is coded A5.
The member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise to reflect a little bit about what Representative Stephenson had to say about some of the concerns of the bill, and I'm offering an amendment today that does what we should do, and that is make sure that we remove any new mandates in this bill. And one of the most important one that Representative Stephenson had mentioned was raising the investor-owned utilities, again, Xcel Energy, Minnesota Power, Otter Tail Power, to require them to spend a minimum amount of money each year on goal savings so that monies can be lessened down the road. The problem that this has in today's world, members, is that even though utility companies say they're already spending the money, just what happened? What would happen if something crazy happened like a pandemic? And they wanted to make some changes to to their business plan. They wanted to lower some of their costs. They are still unsure about what the outcome is going to be on ratepayers able to pay their bills in a number of months. And what this bill does is it increases the cost of that mandate at a time when anything like this should not be considered. So this is the time that we should say no to this. This bill is not ready yet to be passed off the floor. This one amendment is one I also raised in committee. But raising the cost for the IOUs is a wrong thing to do. Now, as the author of the bill said, they don't mind this at this time. They don't. Because investor-owned utilities can just pass it along to their ratepayers. Makes more money for the shareholders. It's a different model than the co-ops and the munis, so it doesn't affect them in this way. But this is not the right thing to do for over half of the citizens of Minnesota that actually pay their electricity from an IOU. This is a good deal for the munis and the co-ops, and I support that part of this. But for half of the state of Minnesota, we have to stand up for all of Minnesota when it comes to ratepayers. Half of my district is more than covered with a municipality and a candy co-op. But I also have some of my communities are under the XL energy territory. I have to stand up for them on this too and say this isn't the right time to force them to bring up that floor on their spending. This is an amendment I hope members you can support. Thank you.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Swazinski moves to amend the Baker Amendment to House File Number 4502, the first engrossment as follows. The amendment to the amendment is coded A10.
The member from Lyon, Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members here and afar. The A10 really recognizes the unique times that we're in. And I also want to thank Mr. Eloff for his hard work on our amendments and the bills as we move these things forward. You know, this amendment is pretty straightforward. It really kind of puts a pause button. So when we're in times of pandemic or an emergency, these utilities are able to simply, when those things are declared, push a pause button to say, you know what, all right, let's stop. Let's focus in on what we need to do to lessen the cost, to lessen the exposure. You know, there is definite fear out there that the utilities will not be able to reach their current mandates because of the COVID-19 outbreak. You know, you can just imagine the practicality of individuals and families that are maybe looking at doing a potential project or a business that the last thing they want to do is have a stranger come in their home. It's one thing if the furnace breaks, but it's another thing if it's maybe more of just a decision that they want to make as a family. And I also, just while I'm up, want to speak to the Baker underlying amendment as well to save the folks a little time. You know, I think the important part, folks, is, you know, while we're told by these utilities, investor-owned particularly, that, hey, we're already doing this. We're doing sometimes 2%. You know, this legislature seems to have a bad habit this session of taking things that the private sector is already doing on their own and mandating into law. Whether it's to do with the pharmaceutical industry, now it's with this energy bill. They're taking things that they're doing on their own, they're moving above and beyond while they can, and they're setting it into law. And folks, I understand that these groups support it, and I think Representative Baker spoke quite clearly on the fact that more revenue means more potential profit for those organizations. And, you know, in a time when we were told, well, businesses just want to do what's right. Well, let's let them do what's right. Let's not force them to do it. You know, if their customers want this and say, hey, we want this to be part of your portfolio. We want you to tax ratepayers so that you can pay for these energy efficiency programs. Let them do it. I mean, you know, we've got a lot of programs out there that are essentially a mandate that raise taxes or raise costs, but those dollars never come in. It's, you know, the bill's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have a large cost to the state of Minnesota. But that's because all the costs are realized outside of the realm from a regulatory standpoint. So the dollars are generated within the utility, the dollars are spent within the utility, and then it generates a report that goes to either the PUC or the Department of Commerce to make sure that they're in compliance. And you know, I've been here a few years, but I think we honestly need to look at, you know, just from a fundamental purpose of what government does, and is that what we should be doing? Should we be increasing mandates? Should we be increasing the demands of business within the state, whether it's publicly owned, privately owned, or cooperative, the rest? And you know, there are some decent parts of this bill, and I think something that we can all agree on is that the SIP program needs reform. And you know, I would just ask for your support on this amendment to the amendment, because I think we need to allow some flexibility within the program, and let's not increase mandates in a time of pandemic. Thank you.
Discussion. Representative Stephenson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would respectfully ask for a no vote on this amendment. We are in unusual times, and we certainly should take that into account. But I think one thing that maybe Representative Stephenson and Representative Baker should be aware of is that the bill does have flexibility for all of our utilities. You know, Representative Baker mentioned that if something happens, we want utilities to have the flexibility to go back and say, well, we can't make these goals now for whatever reason, and that's already in the bill. So if the pandemic is causing utilities to have any difficulty in meeting these goals, they can have those conversations with Commerce and work on those issues already under the bill as it stands here. And so I don't believe that this is a necessary amendment, and I would ask for a no vote.
Representative Spedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think just something to point out that here we have in the 810 amendment, it written in the law that specifies what the relief would be, what the flexibility could potentially be. Under the bill that's before you, the flexibility lies within an unelected commissioner of the Department of Commerce to say, hey, would you please, I'm a utility and I can't reach this mandate. Would you please allow me? Maybe, maybe not. But guess what? Right here actually does it. You have election certificates, the folks that are sitting in this room, the folks sitting in their living room, and the folks that are sitting in their tractor, to make this decision, to give this relief, to give real flexibility within this bill that stands before you. And you know, I think that's an important difference to make. It's one thing to empower the bureaucrats, the unelected folks that run our state, and many times they do a great job. But many times I think we as a legislature advocate too much pressure and too much power to those folks. And I think this is a great opportunity just to simply, you know, put our hand on the scale for those folks that are actually paying the bills and running these programs to be in their favor most every single time. Thank you.
Now we want to know which member is voting from their tractor. Any further discussion to the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. To the underlying amendment, Representative Baker.
Madam Speaker and members, I guess I just want to remind you once again that this is not the time to do a mandate. This is not the time to raise any associated costs with running a utility company, whether you're a muni, a co-op, or anything. I urge a yes vote on my amendment to at least keep the millions of dollars that are currently being spent by all of the utilities in Minnesota at the same level it is now, and not to increase those required spending any further. I urge a yes vote on my amendment. Thank you.
Representative Stephenson.
Madam Speaker, very briefly, I just want to say that we know that this bill will not increase costs for consumers. Increasing the goal to 1.75 won't. In your email boxes are letters from all of Minnesota's investor-owned utilities indicating that they can meet their goals within their current budgets. Excel says that they are confident they can do so because they are already meeting their budget. As I mentioned, all of the utilities in Minnesota have been meeting their goals over the last several years. And I think it's important to say what Representative Baker said about how this is raising the floor a little bit. That's what we're talking about doing here. In 2007, when the SIP program passed in 2007, 1.5% was a goal that utilities were trying to get to. Now we're talking about going up to 1.75% because utilities are pretty consistently getting above 2%. So it makes sense to reflect that new normal that we're having here.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Swedzinski moves to amend House File number 4502, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A7.
Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members, and all those that may be out and about this fine day. I move the A7 amendment before the House floor here. And this amendment particularly talks really to the focus of what are people paying for. And Representative Stephenson just mentioned in his last comments on the Representative Baker amendment before us that this new mandate, this increase in the state sanctioned portion of this bill will not increase the cost. And well, why is it? Because they're already doing it. They're already past that. And what does that mean? That really means that the SIP program is costing ratepayers across the state hundreds of millions of dollars. And so those are potentially already baked into the cake. And so when you're really focusing in on what this amendment does, it's really on-bill reporting. And we're going to say, oh, Chris, you're putting a mandate after you just got done saying you don't want to have mandates. But I think this is really a transparency to say, what is the cost? What does it mean to that mom and pop shop? What the major utilities will say is that, the large consumers, some of the mining industry, some of the heavy industrial manufacturers are not privy to this. They are exempted because of the increased cost and some of the international pressures they have to be able to maintain a cost structure that keeps them competitive. And so what this amendment does is simply line out on people's bills so they understand what SIP is costing them. So if you're a fairly large operator in the state, and that way you can see what this costs on your daily bill. So I know a number of years ago, I'm still on the Legislative Energy Commission, and I remember we opened up the bill, and right there on the bill it said Legislative Energy Commission, X amount of dollars. And what that did was a number of years ago we increased that so that they could hire a full-time person, which is not being filled, so there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that has not blinked back on. But I think it's within our privy, and I think it was a number of years ago there was a conversation with the PUC in talking about, hey, let's be open. Let's have this conversation. Let people know what is driving the costs of their electricity, what is making the cost of electricity. It's residential or industrial or whatever that might be. Oh, it's only going to cost an individual family a couple dollars a year. Well, if you're an individual or a business, it's much, much more than that. And I think people should know. And so that's what this bill does, and I'd appreciate your support. Thank you very much. And I'd ask for a roll call.
Representative Swedzinski requests a roll call. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Stephenson.
Madam Speaker, I would ask for a no vote on the A7 amendment, which asks for a number of lines to be added to every single bill that every single utility in the state prints out. I favor transparency in these things generally, and I can vividly recall bringing a bill to do that to the Energy Committee and being told it was a terrible mandate upon our co-ops in munis in greater Minnesota. This is a compromise bill that's been carefully put together by a lot of people for a long time, and I just don't think that this is something that makes sense to add right now. I think it would needlessly complicate people's bills in a way. We already have seminars being offered to help people understand their electrical bills, and this would make people's electrical bills a lot longer. So I'd ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion to the Swedzinski amendment? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the Swedzinski amendment to the Stephenson bill.
Acom.
Acom, no.
Acom, no. Albright.
Albright, yes.
Albright, aye. Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Anderson, aye. Backer.
Backer, aye.
Backer, aye. Bonner.
Bonner, nay.
Bonner, no. Barr. Barr, aye. Baker. Baker, aye. Becker Finn.
Becker Finn, no.
Becker Finn, no. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, nay.
Bernardi, no. Bierman.
Bierman, no.
Bierman, no. Bow. Bow, aye. Brand.
Brand, no.
Brand, no. Cantrell.
Cantrell, no.
Cantrell, no. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, no.
Carlson, A, no. Carlson, L.
Carlson L, no.
Carlson, L, no. Christensen.
Christensen, no.
Christensen, no. Claflin.
Claflin, no.
Claflin, no. Considine.
Considine, no.
Considine, no. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Doubt. Doubt, aye. Davids. Davids, aye. Davney.
Davney, no.
Davney, no. Dean.
Dean, no.
Dean, no. Damath.
Damath, aye.
Damath, aye. Detmer. Detmer, aye. Drazkowski.
Gruskowski, aye.
Drazkowski, aye. Eklund.
Eklund, no.
Eklund, no. Edelson.
Edelson, no.
Edelson, no. Elkins.
Elkins, no.
Elkins, no. Erickson.
Aye. Erickson.
Erickson, aye. Fabian.
Fabian, aye.
Fabian, aye. Fisher.
Fisher, no.
Fisher, no. Franzen.
Franson, no. Or no. Franson, yes.
Franzen, aye. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes no.
Freiberg, no. Garofalo.
Garofalo, yes.
Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Green. Green, aye. Grossel.
Russell, aye.
Grossel, aye. Grunhagen. Grunhagen, aye. Gunther.
Gunther, aye.
Gunther, aye. Haley.
Haley, aye.
Haley, aye. Halverson.
Halverson, aye.
Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hanson.
Hanson, no.
Hanson, no. Hassan.
Hassan, no.
Hassan, no. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Her.
Her, no.
Her, no. Hertas.
Happy birthday. Hopefully you get out of here. Hertas, aye.
Hertas, aye. Hornstein.
Hornstein, no.
Hornstein, no. Howard.
No.
Howard, no. Hewitt.
Hewitt, no.
Hewitt, no. Johnson. Johnson, aye. Jordan.
Jordan, no.
Jordan, no. Jurgens.
Jurgens votes aye.
Jurgens, aye. Keel.
Keel votes aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
No.
Cleavorn, no. Cagle.
Cagle, no.
Cagle, no. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, no.
Katiza Watun, no. Kosnick. Kosnick. Kreshaw.
Kreshaw, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, no.
Kunish Podine, no. Lehman.
Lehman, aye.
Lehman, aye. Lee. Lee.
Lee, no.
Lee, no. Lesh.
Lesh, no.
Lesh, no. Liebling.
Liebling, no.
Liebling, no. Lean.
Lean, no.
Lean, no. Lillie. Lillie, no. Lippert.
Lippert, no.
Lippert, no. Lislegard.
Lislegard, no.
Lislegard, no. Long.
Long, no.
Long, no. Lucero. Lucero, aye. Lewick.
Lewick, aye.
Lewick, aye. Mahoney.
Mahoney, no.
Mahoney, no. Mann. Man.
Man, aye. I'm sorry, no.
Man, no.
Man, no.
Man, no. Mariani. Mariani. Markwart.
Markwart, no.
Markwart, no. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. McDonald.
McDonald? Yes.
McDonald, aye. Mecklen.
Meckland, aye.
Mecklen, aye. Miller. Miller, aye. Moeller.
Moeller, no.
Moeller, no. Moran.
Moran, no.
Moran, no. Morrison.
Morrison, no.
Morrison, no. Munson.
Munson, yes.
Munson, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no. Nash.
Nash, aye.
Nash, aye. Nelson M.
Nelson M, no.
Nelson M, no. Nelson N.
Nelson N, aye.
Nelson N, aye. New.
New, aye.
New, aye. Nor.
No, no.
Nor, no. Nornis.
Nornis, aye.
Nornis, aye. Novotny.
Novotny, aye.
Novotny, aye. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, yes.
O'Driscoll, aye. Olson.
Olson, no.
Olson, no. O'Neill.
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, no.
Pulowski, no. Purcell.
Purcell, no.
Purcell, no. Petersburg.
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, no.
Pinto, no. Poppy.
Poppy, no.
Poppy, no. Poston.
Poston, aye.
Poston, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Quam.
Guam, aye.
Quam, aye. Richardson.
Richardson, no.
Richardson, no. Robbins. Robbins, aye. Runbeck.
Runback, aye.
Runbeck, aye. Sandell.
Sandell, no.
Sandell, no. Sandsted.
Sandsted, no.
Sandsted, no. Sauk.
Sauk, no.
Sauk, no. Schumacher.
Schumacher, yes.
Schumacher, aye. Schultz.
Schultz, no.
Schultz, no. Scott.
Scott, yes.
Scott, aye. Stephenson. Stephenson, no. Sundin.
Sundin, no.
Sundin, no. Swazinski. Swazinski, aye. Tabke.
Tabke, no.
Tabke, no. Tice.
Tice, aye.
Tice, aye. Torkelson.
Torkelson, aye.
Torkelson, aye. Erdahl.
Erdahl, aye.
Erdahl, aye. Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. Vogel.
Vogel, aye.
Vogel, aye. Wagenius.
Wagenius, no.
Wagenius, no. Wozlowick.
Wozlowick, no.
Wozlowick, no. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, no. Walgamot.
Wolgamott, no.
Walgamot, no. Zhang Jie.
John Jay, no.
Zhang Jie, no. Zhang Ti.
John T, no.
Zhang Ti, no. Joachim.
Joachim, no.
Joachim, no. Speaker Hartman. No. Speaker Hartman, no. Kosnick. Kosnick.
Cosmic votes aye. Cosmic votes aye.
Kosnick, aye. Halverson. Halverson.
Halverson changes from aye to no.
Halverson changes from aye to no. Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. That's it, right?
There being 59 ayes and 75 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 4502.
Third reading. Discussion. The member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen.
Is this on? Yep. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm not on the Energy Committee, so I have relied a little bit on the analysis by staff. But according to staff, this bill will lead to the near term to rate hikes for large utility customers. The bill will lead to longer term rate hikes for all electric consumers. The bill will lead to job losses for propane and fuel oil dealers. As you know, there is some good in this bill that I can support, and I would like to if it wasn't filled with some of the things I strongly oppose. Because when I look at this bill, I see that it continues the war on coal and oil. And remember, members, technology has always solved our pollution problems. You know, oil, coal, and natural gas provide efficient, reliable, and cheap energy. Alternative energy, on the other hand, such as windmills and solar, are inefficient, unreliable, and expensive. And to me, that's the direction this bill takes us. The other thing, members, I know a worker who worked with alternative energy, windmills specifically, met him several years ago. And he said that the workers who assemble the windmill hub have to wear protective gear because there's harsh chemicals inside of that hub. He also indicated that solar also has harsh chemicals. So what we're doing, members, is we're promoting through this alternative energy, not clean energy, but dirty energy. It's inefficient, unreliable, and expensive. And I believe we're creating, with this alternative energy mandates, one of the biggest environmental disasters in the history of the state of Minnesota. And there's no money that I know of that's set aside to deal with this when these things become obsolete. Members, I had a lobbyist for energy stop into my office before COVID, and he showed me the rate increases just under current law with this alternative energy. I mean, we're going to skyrocket our electricity costs in this state, and it's not going to produce clean energy. You know, we can say it's going to reduce electricity rates, but if we look at the laws that have been passed regarding energy by the Minnesota House in the last decade or so, it's resulted in increased rates. So members, if you care about your children, your grandchildren, low-income people, and seniors, I urge you to vote against this bill, okay? And remember, the global warming is a UN tax stealing scam. We can have clean energy, oil-based or propane or whatever, and it can be penny cheap to our consumers with modern technology. But we can't have that when we're promoting this alternative energy nonsense. Members, previous laws and this law are simply the Obamacare of energy in this state. We're driving up the cost, hurting our businesses and our citizens. So I strongly urge you, members, to vote against this bill. Thank you.
The member from Candy, Ohio, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I wanted to stand up and thank the author for his work on this bill, and I also was one of the co-authors with Representative Eklund when the SIP bill was around last year. I was one of the 18 or 19, I think, GOP members that were also on that bill. This bill is much different than that, and I wanted to just give an overview of what the SIP was and is. And again, it's complicated. It's been around 20, 25 years. Conservation Improvement Program is what the SIP stands for. Again, it gives rebates to a lot of folks buying new refrigerators, new washers and dryers, and it's been around a long time. And I think that most utility companies and munis and co-ops would tell you that the low-hanging and even the medium-hanging fruit is pretty much gone. That you can't buy a new refrigerator these days without having it star rated. And I think that is a clear message to the way our private industries work to improve their products with technology. They've done a really good job in improving that over the decades. So SIP needed a redo. And I knew that a number of years ago when I was working with Senator Marty on this, when we just started to get this thing rolling. And again, I appreciate the work because there are some things in this bill I really do like. I like the fact that our munis and co-ops have come to an agreement so they see more clearly for their members, their smaller organizations, how they can get their arms around this portion of the bill. For that reason, this part of the bill is good. I have talked to a number of members around the state of Minnesota who are covered by munis and co-ops. That part of the bill isn't bad. We're getting a lot of support from those friends of ours and members out in the rural area for that. But we're state legislators. We're not county legislators. We're not service area director legislators. We represent the entire state of Minnesota. And the reason I'm having a hard time supporting the bill today is because it's not quite ready. It really shouldn't go to the Department of Commerce to figure out the rest of the rules and then be presented to the PUC for let them figure out the remaining part of this. My concern is that we're 70, 80% right, but we have some major issues in here that should really be talked about. And I hope that when it leaves the House floor, it comes back better with some of the provisions we talked about today. Let's get rid of the increasing the mandates for the public utility companies that represent millions of citizens in Minnesota. Propane industry is vital to rural Minnesota, and they were not at the table. They were not part of the conversation. They should have been, whether they participate in SIP or not, they should have been there anyway to be talking about what do you like about this, what don't you like about this, because fuel switching and industries or energies going over one or the other is not what has been the history in Minnesota. They have all worked very collaboratively, and in this case, they really were kind of left out. Now, one thing I learned about propane is it is one of the cleanest fuels out there. It takes 2.8 units of energy to get 1 unit of energy, electricity, to the load, so the end of it. Let me say that again. It takes 2.8 units of energy to deliver 1 unit of energy to the load, which is the end user. Propane, on the other hand, is 1.01 energy to the load. So it's almost no energy created, almost except delivering it to the premise. So it's a super clean energy. It's one that I think most people in Minnesota know that. And propane is an amazing industry for us in Minnesota, and we have to do what we have to do to protect this industry. If they don't like it, members, 134 members around the state of Minnesota, we need to pay attention to what the propane industry says. One of the ideas I think that should come back with this bill once it leaves the House floor, assuming it'll pass. I know Senator Rarick has worked hard on this bill as well in the Senate, and I hope that it comes back with some cleaner language, and I asked the author to consider this when he takes it to conference committee, is to bring back some cleaner language that recognizes that propane clean energy side of things. And I know that he respects the propane industry, so I hope that we bring back an amendment or a new bill that shows that fuel switching, if you're gonna switch the fuel, by all means, then it should be a cleaner fuel. That should be part of that conversation. Not just cheaper, but it also should be cleaner. So members, I want to thank the utilities around the state of Minnesota, the munis, my friends at the co-ops. They have worked hard on this bill, and we're almost there. But this one today I cannot support, and I hope that we send a strong message of concerns to this bill to make it better when it comes back to the House floor, because the Conservation Improvement Program is an important program that I will support going forward. And I do hope I can support the bill when it comes back. So, members, today I'm going to be voting no. I would appreciate your doing the same. We can do this one a little bit better. Thank you, members.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Like Representative Gruenhagen, I am not on the committee and I am not deep in the weeds on these issues, but I have been contacted by dozens of constituents over the last few days and have had quite an education. So I am rising in opposition to this bill because the parts that are good, that I really do support, are the parts that Representative Baker referred to, the flexibility that it provides the co-ops and the muni-operated utilities. And that's been long sought and long needed. They need the flexibility. They have more mandates than others, and so I appreciate that very much. But the part I can't support is the mandate increase to 1.75. I struggle to see how this makes any sense. Referring to Leader Doubt's comments earlier, 640,000 Minnesotans are out of work. Many of those people are rightly being granted the ability to continue to have their power left on, even if they can't pay their utility bills. I think that's something we all support. But what that means is that people who are paying their utility bills are going to be the ones making up the difference. And so that's already going to be a rate increase on payers, whether you're in the consumer-owned, the co-op-owned or the customer-owned or the IOU one. Sorry, I'm having a moment. Can't remember the name of that, but the investor-owned, forgive me. So either way, the consumer, the customer, no matter which system you're in, is going to have a rate increase or increase in their cost of energy this year. We cannot then tack on top of that another mandated increase that maybe, I know Representative Stephenson says that, well, it doesn't matter because they're already above the 1.75, they're at 2 or above anyway. But if they are, then this is not necessary. And if, when the economy is in trouble, people cannot continue to invest in new lighting systems or HVAC systems for their business, and maybe they struggle to meet the new 1.75 mandate, then that will also increase costs. So I really think we have to be standing up for the consumer who will face rate increases and increases in their energy bill this year. And so I'm supporting what's going on for the co-ops, and I appreciate the hard work that's gone into that, but I really am hoping this comes back from the Senate without the rate increase. So, and I also support the amendments that Senator Rarick is proposing to involve propane in this. He has 2 amendments that my understanding was were supposed to be offered here in the House but missed the deadline. And so if we come back with no rate increase and we come back with the Rarick amendments that will involve propane in these discussions of how the fuel switching will be administered, then I think we'll have a pretty good bill. Thank you, members.
The member from Monoman, Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues. They have hit on most of the topics I was going to hit on, but one thing that they have left out so far, and that is the ratepayers and what it really means to them. And we're talking electricity here, and we're only dabbling in the propane part of this. And I can tell you that in my area, over the last years, substantial investments have been made in upgrading old fuel oil furnaces to propane. And it's a big hit. In fact, some of the people there are still paying those off. And now you're going to require this fuel switching. And I'm not sure if you really realize what that's going to do to these folks. In Monoman County, Wildrice Electric sends out right now 500 notices every month for people who are not be able to make their electric bills. And that was before the COVID. So we're a poor county, and with a lot of the folks in other counties as well. They can't afford these mandates. It just can't happen. not for them to stay viable. Because every time you pass one of these, you may think you're doing something better into the future, but all these ratepayers are getting increased in their costs. And I'll remind you, the last time something of this went through this chamber, before I was here, on a bipartisan vote, was in 2008. And the people in my district and across Minnesota saw their electric rates nearly triple. And it took a long time to get over that. And even now, we're still seeing the residual effects of that for people that can't make these bills. A lot of people, when electricity was low, before the last mandates came on, did put in electric plenums within or electric furnaces in their plenums. And most of them can't afford to run them now because the electric rates are so high. We got a small reprieve here in the fact that a lot of people switched over to do propane. We have the farmers that rely heavily on propane for their drying. And if we start doing this, we're going to not only hurt the electric costs because the mandates are going to drive up those costs. By reducing the amount of propane that we're moving forward through the state, we're going to substantially increase the cost of propane. This is going to hurt everybody. This is not a well thought out bill. And as Representative Baker said, the SIP program is antiquated. It's just over. We're continuing to buy, help purchase new appliances that are energy efficient, but you can't buy a non-energy efficient appliance. So you may be helping one person for a short time, but their rates are going to go up to do this as well. The other mandates on our electric companies also include they have to spend a certain amount of their money. For wild rice, it's nearly $250,000 every year to tell people not to use electricity. Ratepayers are also paying for that. It's time that we really did some responsible work here and start looking out for the people of Minnesota. So I hope you vote no on this bill.
The member from Anoka, Representative Stephenson.
Madam Speaker, pardon me. Thank you for the debate today, members of the chamber. I just want to conclude with a few points. First of all, I want to note that this really is a compromise bill that has resulted from years of discussions from just a ton of people from a ton of different perspectives. No one in this chamber is going to like 100% of what's in this bill. That's the nature of when you get a large group of people together and work collaboratively and try and find a solution that can work for everyone. So I can hear my colleagues talking about some of the things they don't like. That's fair. But on balance, this bill should be moving the ball forward for everyone. And I think everyone should be able to recognize that. I want to address a few things that were brought up. First of all, a lot of talk about this fuel switching provision and its impact, particularly on propane. The number one thing I want to tell you is fuel switching under this bill is not required. And it's fuel neutral, right? So we're not preferring one type over another. Fuel switching can only happen under this bill if it's cost effective and reduces emissions. So, Representative Baker was making some great points about how propane functions. And, if that's true, then the fuel switch won't be allowed under those circumstances. And the people who are concerned about propane shouldn't be under the plain terms of the bill. I also want to talk a little bit about who had seats at the table here. As I mentioned, this negotiation has been going on for a long time, years. I think Representative Baker talked about his involvement going back years on this subject. And, propane has had a chance to make their views heard. They participated in conversations with the Department of Commerce. Senator Rarick has been working with them quite a bit, as was already mentioned. I, at the committee hearing, told them that I'd be happy to talk to them anytime. And, the other thing I would note is that a bill that was about 95% the same as this bill passed off the House floor last year. So it's not coming out of nowhere. Propane has had a lot of time to get in. I also want to say, I want to disagree respectfully with the comments of Representative Baker that we've gotten rid of all of the low-hanging fruit here and that there's nothing really left to do here. Actually, our energy conservation has been accelerating. We were at 1.7% on the IU basis in 2014. We're at 2.3% in 2017. Co-ops were at 1% in 2014. They're 1.4% in 2017. There's a lot more that can be done in this area. And as I said in my opening remarks, it's the cheapest way for us to meet our electrical demand, costing about a fourth of what any other type of electricity costs. So there is room to keep growing here, and we should be continuing to work on it. The bottom line is this bill will save consumers money and will create jobs. And that's why I ask for your yes vote.
The member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Speakers. I think we'll all agree on the House floor as we stand here today that SIP needs reform. Some of the work that's been done, particularly for the co-ops and munis, I think is a slight positive, but I don't think it's positive enough to cast a green vote for this bill at this time. I think fundamentally we need to look at what is the changes we've made here in the legislature that we move forward. Representative Stephenson talked about that this bill has been under negotiation for over 2 years. Some of the work that's been done in the meantime was some of the democracy work that says, local cooperatives are democracy. They're locally elected folks that make decision on where their electricity should come. And I fundamentally disagree that we should continue mandating at all to utilities that are directly responsive to their member-owned utility. We should allow those folks to decide whether or not they want to implement a program that has a 1.5 SIP or 1.7 or 2. I think that's the fundamental difference that we need to be taking into these conversations to say, do we trust locally elected officials to make decision on schools? Do we allow folks that are locally elected to make the difference and choices on their utilities and what programs they offer and how they tax one another in order to achieve those goals? So I think that's a fundamental difference that we may have as we look forward when it comes to dealing with locally elected folks that represent us in the electricity world, and I think that's the way we need to change here at the state legislature. While some of the mandates and changes allow some flexibility when you go and ask the Department of Commerce if you're having trouble, but at the end of the day, this does increase the cost overall by hundreds of millions of dollars. Not this particular bill, but the program as a whole. And we might be raising it here, lowering it there for certain folks. That may be true, but I think we had an opportunity to really bring those things into the light with my amendment that sadly went down, to line item it and show folks that because there is a fair amount of popularity, you ask, I think that's a good idea. I like that. That's a free program that we get to utilize to lower the cost of energy for folks. But folks, it's not free. It does cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Early on when we heard this Representative Stevens' bill in committee, one of the things that was brought to light, because of the timing, it had been worked on for a long time, but I think most folks fell because of the COVID pandemic that this bill was particularly DOA, that the propane folks were really set on their heel and really felt that they kind of got backdoored a little bit on this thing, and they felt they weren't brought to the table because they weren't. They weren't brought to the table, said, what are your thoughts? And I understand Representative Rarick has opened the door to those folks and is entertaining some language, but I would ask members to say that those folks need to be at the table and those folks need to give a green light, because believe it or not, those folks are mom and pop shops where they deliver heating oil to homes or propane. They're an affected business model. I think something Representative Stephenson said that says reduce emissions. Well, what does that mean? I know all winter long my propane furnace exhausts right out the side of my house. And if that's going to be the reasoning to say, well, if it reduces emissions, CO2, that's fine, but if it doesn't, well, then it's open. I think that's how that's going to be, and I think that's the real fear that propane folks have is that, well, look at that, right there, it's got CO2 and it's coming out of the side of your house. The practicality nature of what propane does is it takes a gas or a liquid and turns it into a gas and then turns it into another gas. And if that's going to be viewed as emissions and viewed like that, then I think propane folks do have something to be concerned about. And this is a domino effect. If you take out homes, if you take out market share, all of a sudden, as a farmer and a leader, what does that mean? How many businesses will survive? How many folks will be able to contain within the industry and the infrastructure that's needed to maintain it? And what will that do to ultimate costs? As of right now, this bill picks winners and losers. It does some good things, expands things. And I think something we should also be fearing is the updated goal. So currently the goal is 1.5, moves it, I believe, to 2.5%. And you know, this legislature, I think, understands what goals are. Sooner or later, they become mandates. And I think that's the price to be paid. I mean, I think utilities are so desperate to get out from the underneath of this thumb of this really fairly rigid mandate on them that they're willing to give up things like, well, we'll put a goal in, even though we know that, well, next session, I know there's probably going to be a member that says, well, don't you believe that we should have a goal and shouldn't we do things to achieve it? Do you agree? Do you agree? Yeah, that conversation may not happen next session. May not happen the next, but it will happen, folks. And that's a piper to pay, and it's a trade-off. Folks are going to get a little bit of relief in the SIP from one side of this. And they say, well, we're already doing it anyway. Why not? But when it becomes 2.5 or 3 or whatever that goal may be, when it becomes a mandate, those things are real. Because when you push that green button, folks, you're saying, well, you know, this is already happening, so we'll vote yes. But there are other parts of the bill that aren't. That will be required someday, and it will be used against some legislator that sits in your seat, maybe 5, maybe 2, maybe 1, maybe 3, maybe next week, against them to say, well, this is a goal, another legislator supported it, and you should support it too, and let's mandate that. So, you know, this bill is opposed by the Minnesota Chamber, the petroleum retailers, folks, folks that sell gas and heating oil and the propane. And while this bill does have some good things for some cooperatives, but what is a trade-off? I think we should be empowering those folks that have locally elected boards that can vote and place these things in themselves, but that's not before us today. So I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Not always easy. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Energy policy is not always easy to navigate. There are lots of different interests and different points of view. But if you are a legislator who wants to support clean energy, I think this is as safe a bill as you're going to find. We passed a version of this bill out of the House last year, but since then the biggest changes we made were the result of discussions with cooperative and municipal utilities. And for cooperative utilities and municipal utilities in particular, this bill will provide increased flexibility to meet their energy efficiency targets. For example, it increases regulatory flexibility to submit their efficiency plans every 3 years rather than every year. It removes current minimum spending requirements and moves to a program instead based on energy savings. But you don't have to take my word for it. The letter that was sent around from the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association said, ECO relieves mandates and offers flexibility that will help utilities be efficient and keep costs down. We've heard some concern in the discussion today about the customer impacts of this bill. But the good news is that energy efficiency is by far the lowest cost energy resource and a lot cheaper than building new generation. So why should we have energy efficiency goals at all? Shouldn't we just let utilities decide on their own? Well, the reason we have efficiency goals is for our consumers. Generally, utilities don't want to sell less energy, but consumers certainly do want to use less energy and save money on their bills. According to the Minnesota Department of Commerce, every dollar invested in the Conservation Improvement Program generates at least $4 in benefits from energy savings, and to date, the SIP program has provided $6 billion in net benefits to Minnesota. All of the investor-owned utilities are already meeting the requirements of this bill. They all support it, and they can all meet the goals within their current budgets. The SIP program doesn't regulate propane. The concern seems to be over fuel switching. This provision was flexibility that was requested by folks like cooperative utilities and municipal utilities. But any fuel switching project under this legislation will be required to pass important cost effectiveness tests and also will have to demonstrate clear energy savings benefits to customers. We always like to think of ourselves as the best in Minnesota, but for energy efficiency, we're only the 8th best. So we've got to get competitive. This bill will help us make even further progress on the already noteworthy energy efficiency work we have as a state. And lastly, there were some questions about why now. I just want to talk a little bit about the job benefits of the conservation programs. We're talking about electrical, heating and cooling, ventilation, insulation installment. These are over 445,000 local jobs right now that are supported in the state by the Conservation Improvement Program. And these efficiency projects are shovel ready. In the last economic downturn, the federal government's stimulus answer was the Recovery Act. 1 in 8 of those federal dollars were for energy efficiency or renewable energy programs. So we know that investing in these projects now will not only help consumers save money on their energy bills, but it will also stimulate the economy at a critical time. It's likely impossible to satisfy everyone when it comes to energy legislation, but I'd be surprised if we see as widely supported a bill as this one for many more years. I want to thank Representative Stephenson for his hard work on this bill. I was honored to carry this provision last year in Governor Walz's clean energy package, and it's been great to team up with Representative Stephenson this year. I also want to thank the coalition that has worked so hard to get this agreement, and I urge members to support.
The clerk will take the roll. Members on the phone, please be prepared when he gets to your part of the alphabet. Thank you.
Acom.
Acom, aye.
Acom, aye. Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Anderson.
Anderson, no.
Anderson, no. Backer.
Backer, no.
Backer, no. Bonner.
Bonner, aye.
Bonner, aye. Barr. Barr, no. Baker. Baker, no. Becker, Finn.
Becker, Finn, aye.
Becker, Finn, aye. Bennett.
Bennett, aye.
Bennett, aye. Bernardi.
Bernardi, aye.
Bernardi, aye. Bierman.
Bierman, aye.
Bierman, aye. Bow. Bow, no. Brand.
Brand, yes.
Brand, aye. Cantrell.
Cantrell, aye.
Cantrell, aye. Carlson, A.
Carlson, A, aye.
Carlson, A, aye. Carlson, L.
Carlson, L, aye.
Carlson, L, aye. Christensen.
Christensen, aye.
Christensen, aye. Claflin.
Claflin, aye.
Claflin, aye. Considine.
Considine, aye.
Considine, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels, no. Doubt. Doubt, no. Davids. Davids, no. Davney.
Davney, aye.
Davney, aye. Dean. Dean. Damath.
Damath, no.
Damath, no. Detmer. Detmer, no. Driscowski.
Driscowski, no.
Driscowski, no. Eklund.
Eklund, aye.
Eklund, aye. Edelson.
Edelson, yes.
Edelson, aye. Elkins.
Elkins, aye.
Elkins, aye. Erickson.
Erickson, no.
Erickson, no. Fabian.
Fabian, no.
Fabian, no. Fisher.
Fisher, aye.
Fisher, aye. Franzen. Franzen. Freiberg.
Freiberg votes yes.
Freiberg, aye. Garofalo.
Garofalo, yes.
Garofalo, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Green. Green, no. Grossel.
Grossel, no.
Grossel, no. Grunhagen. Grunhagen, no. Gunther.
Gunther, no.
Gunther, no. Haley.
Haley, no.
Haley, no. Halverson.
Halverson, aye.
Halverson, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton, no. Hanson.
Hanson, aye.
Hanson, aye. Hassan.
Hassan, aye.
Hassan, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich, no. Heinzman.
Heinzman, no.
Heinzman, no. Her.
Her, aye.
Her, aye. Hertas.
Hertas, no.
Hertas, no. Hornstein.
Hornstein, aye.
Hornstein, aye. Howard.
Howard, aye.
Howard, aye. Hewitt.
Be ready in a minute.
Hewitt, aye.
Hewitt, aye. Johnson. Johnson, no. Jordan.
Jordan, aye.
Jordan, aye. Jurgens.
Jurgens, no.
Jurgens, no. Keel.
Aye.
Keel, aye. Cleavorn.
Cleaborn, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Cagle.
You're a couple steps ahead of us.
Cagle, aye.
Cagle, aye. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Watun, aye.
Katiza Watun, aye. Kosnick. Kosnick. Krisha.
Krisha, no.
Krisha, no. Kunish Podine.
Kunish Podine, aye.
Kunish Podine, aye. Lehman.
Lehman, no.
Lehman, no. Lee.
Lee, aye.
Lee, aye. Lesh.
Lesh, aye.
Lesh, aye. Liebling.
Liebling, aye.
Liebling, aye. Lean.
Lean, aye.
Lean, aye. Lillie. Lillie, aye. Lippert.
Lippert, aye.
Lippert, aye. Lislegard.
Lislegard, aye.
Lislegard, aye. Long.
Long, aye.
Long, aye. Lucero. Lucero, no. Lewick.
Lewick, no.
Lewick, no. Mahoney.
Mahoney, aye.
Mahoney, aye. Mann.
Man, aye.
Mann, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Marquardt.
Marquardt, no.
Marquardt, no. Mason. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. McDonald.
McDonald, no.
McDonald, no. Mecklin.
Meckland, nay.
Mecklin, no. Miller. Miller, no. Moeller.
Moeller, aye.
Moeller, aye. Moran.
Moran, aye.
Moran, aye. Morrison.
Morrison, aye.
Morrison, aye. Munson.
Munson, no.
Munson, no. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, no.
Nash, no. Nelson, M.
Nelson, M. Aye.
Nelson, M, aye. Nelson, N.
Nelson, N, no.
Nelson, N, no. New. New.
New, no.
New, no. Nor.
Nor, aye.
Nor, aye. Nornis.
Nornis, no.
Nornis, no. Novotny.
Novotny, no.
Novotny, no. O'Driscoll.
O'Driscoll, no.
O'Driscoll, no. Olson.
Olson, aye.
Olson, aye. O'Neill.
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Purcell.
Purcell, aye.
Purcell, aye. Petersburg.
Petersburg, no.
Petersburg, no. Pearson.
Pearson, no.
Pearson, no. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Poppy.
Poppy, aye.
Poppy, aye. Poston.
Poston, no.
Poston, no. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Quam.
Quam, no.
Quam, no. Richardson.
Richardson, aye.
Richardson, aye. Robbins. Robbins, no. Runbeck.
Runbeck, no.
Runbeck, no. Sandell.
Sandell, aye.
Sandell, aye. Sandsted.
Sandsted, aye.
Sandsted, aye. Sauk.
Elk, aye.
Sauk, aye. Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Schultz.
Schultz, aye.
Schultz, aye. Scott.
Scott, no.
Scott, no. Stephenson. Stephenson, aye. Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski. Swazinski, no. Tabke.
Tabke, aye.
Tabke, aye. Tice.
Tice, no.
Tice, no. Torkelson.
Torkelson, no.
Torkelson, no. Erdahl.
Erdahl, no.
Erdahl, no. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye. Vogel.
Vogel, no.
Vogel, no. Wagenius.
Wagenius, aye.
Wagenius, aye. Waslowick.
Wozluik, aye.
Wozluik, aye. West.
West, aye.
West, aye. Winkler. Winkler, aye. Wolgamott.
Wolgamott, aye.
Wolgamott, aye. Zhang Jie.
Zhang Jie, aye.
Zhang Jie, aye. Zhang Ti.
Zhang Ti, aye.
Zhang Ti, aye. Joachim.
Joachim, aye.
Joachim, aye. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, aye. Dean.
Dean, aye.
Dean, aye. Franzen.
Franson, no.
Franzen, no. Kosnick.
Cosmic, no.
Kosnick, no. It's got them all right.
There being 79 ayes and 55 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Without objection, we'll revert to reports of standing committees and divisions.
Copy of this order of business is online.
Copy of this order of business is online. Without objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House files.
Second reading, House File number 4374.
Second reading. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions. First, hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Pursuant to Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, Miller moves that the rule therein be suspended and an urgency be declared so that House File number 4655 be recalled from the Committee on Government Operations, be given its second and third readings, and be placed upon its final passage.
The member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, I truly wish at this time that I had the speaking skills that many of you have in this room. I admire the passion with which you guys speak, the eloquence. I think of many people in this room that could perhaps argue this better than I could in this room. But the thing that I do bring is the courage of my convictions, and I think this is a very important matter before us. I haven't been hearing many other people talking about this, so I'm taking this opportunity to try and address a very serious issue in our state. Members, we're in a crisis like our nation and our state have not seen in a very long time, quite possibly since the Civil War. It's not the pandemic. It's not the economic meltdown that we're facing. It's a constitutional crisis. We carry many responsibilities as legislators. We manage other people's money to spend in the interests of those in our state. We bring the concerns of our constituents to the Capitol. We listen to the concerns of other constituents, and we make policy, and we vote on law for that. However, I think, members, a real important responsibility we also have is that we're the caretakers of the heritage and the fundamental principles of our state in the United States. We're caretakers of what was handed down to us from previous generations. Now, in the last several weeks, couple months, we've addressed very difficult issues as it relates to the sickness. As Jacob, my son, and I talk about, we refer to it as a sickness. It's a way that he can understand it. We talk about the economic implications of people in our districts, some of the other many different challenges that we have. And yet I haven't heard us talk a whole lot about the implications that I'm referring to. What is this that we are as a state and as a nation at its very fundamental core? I look up in the chamber, I stare at someone that I greatly admire, President Lincoln, all the time, and he seems to look over us in contemplation. I think he says to me, what are you going to do to work towards the best interests of the people of Minnesota? How are you going to make the state better? But more importantly, are you going to stand for what's right, even in the face of pressure and dissent? And members, I hope you all can support me in that today. I think Lincoln faced many of the questions that I think about these days. Who are we as a people in this state and nation? What are the most important things we need to hold on to? I think what happens when there's a lot of uncertainty like Lincoln faced then and we face now, these sort of questions come to mind. I heard someone say once that the great American experiment is like a long relay race, with each generation taking the baton and advancing the fundamental truths of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when it's handed off to the next, to the next, and to the next. But we must always remember where we came from and where we need to go. As a people, I believe that we've come complacent from where we came from, some perhaps ignorant, and certainly apathetic to the very foundation of the United States and our Constitution. I believe that we as a people have dropped that baton. Perhaps even more so, over many years, we as government have slowly chipped away at the fundamental protections our forefathers gave the people in the Bill of Rights to defend us against the very government that serves them. And I won't read through the 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights, members. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I encourage you to look through them and apply them to the things that we're looking at in the last 10, 15, 20 years. You know, certainly the 10th Amendment, the states' rights, we seem to have completely abandoned those. Many of the things in legal due process are pushed to their limits. People like me have spoken up very clearly about the Second Amendment and our right to bear arms. There's been the ACLU. There has been other groups that have talked about freedom of speech, freedom of religion. I think that that is the thing that is most under attack right now, and I think we need to stand up to that. So members, we have these Bill of Rights that protect us from our government. I think the forefathers were very smart with that. And yet today, because we are in a never-before-seen crisis of health, we have apparently abandoned one of our most basic and cherished protections from government, and that's the right to express our faith as we will. It chills me to the core. Members, I'm happy to see the governor has finally loosened some of the restrictions on churches, but it's my opinion he doesn't have the authority to shut them down to begin with. I do want to read the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of their grievances. Members, it is really clear Mentioned the ACLU, and over the years we've talked about separation of church and state. They coined that back in the 60s, and we carry that to this day. We argue that of what that means. But members, there's nothing to argue about here. No law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Members, the governor can extol churches, he can admonish them, he can bully, but he cannot shut them down under the penalty of law. He simply cannot. Members, I'd like to skip my pages, and so I'd like to really give you the heart and soul of what I believe our nation is founded on. All the way back with the Mayflower Compact, before we were even a nation, we established a government that the root of our Constitution is built on. Let me read just a portion of it. In the name of God, amen. We, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of faith, have undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and the honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. The Declaration of Independence, which we founded our nation on. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Members, our power is by the consent of the governed, not the opposite. Again, I want to say this again. The governor can extol, he can admonish, he can even bully those of faith, but he cannot shut them down under penalty of law. He cannot. And I don't care if you are Catholic, Muslim, Latter-day Saint, Baptist, Hindu, Jewish, Buddhist, whatever your belief system. You can be humanist, agnostic, or atheist, whatever. Government cannot dictate to you how you worship, no matter how compelling it may sound. To wrap up, members, last week when Representative Winkler was talking about the executive powers, he said, this is not in the Minnesota Constitution. This was laws passed by the legislature. And I'm sure we have in our Constitution somewhere, certainly in the U.S. Constitution, which we also abide by and swear to, we have our freedoms of religion. But I think it's time that all of us speak very clearly to the governor of Minnesota. We can talk about what businesses should or shouldn't do. We can talk what people should do for the safety. But members, they cannot take away our right to worship as we so choose. So members, I ask for your support in this, that we take this up, we address this legislation, we put it in the form that it should be, and we get it to the governor. Thank you.
The member from Wright, Representative Lucero.
As an ordained minister, Madam Speaker, I speak in favor of the motion by Representative Miller. Madam Speaker, it has become abundantly clear that Governor Walz and this Democrat majority must be reminded that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Religious liberty, members, is among those unalienable rights. And Governor Walz and this Democrat majority see fit to infringe upon Minnesotans' individual liberty and religious liberty. And when I look at the Declaration of Independence, among the items, the enumeration of the infractions committed against our founding fathers in their day, one of them is, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms, and repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. Now, there's no injury here, physically, but there is psychological and other injury that this executive and this Democrat majority has continued to inflict on law-abiding citizens. In the conclusion of the Declaration of Independence, our founding fathers write, "We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions," and they go on. There have been appeals, Madam Speaker, to Governor Walz and to the Democrat majority that have gone unanswered. And there are appeals to the supreme judge of the world. And those won't go unanswered. Madam Speaker, Governor Walz is infringing upon our constitutionally protected religious liberty. Governor Walz slams closed the doors of our churches and makes sure our churches are empty while holding wide open the doors of liquor stores and abortion murder mills. It's a lie to claim data-driven decisions mandate the embrace of abortion and liquor while using government force to threaten pastors and churches. Rather, it's a depraved mind motivated by political calculation seeking to grant political favor to friends. We know the truth. Where a person's treasure is, there is where their heart will also be. Clearly, Governor Walz's treasure and heart is with Planned Parenthood and booze. We also know the truth. The love of money is the root of all evil. And opening the doors of Planned Parenthood and liquor stores is indeed evil, while the doors of our churches are forced closed. Minnesotans see through Governor Walz's false claims of data-driven decisions. Minnesotans are demanding Governor Walz end his unconstitutional infringement upon religious liberty. Madam Speaker, I highly encourage members to vote in favor of the motion by Representative Miller. Thank you.
The member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Do you want to take your mask off? All right. No. You know, I stand in support of opening our churches again, Madam Speaker. The constitutional basis has been expressed. You know, we've seen in our society, we've seen our big box stores be open. We've seen our candy store be open with over 100 customers in it. You know, I have a relative that just took a vacation last week down to Galveston, Texas. They flew down, and I talked to the relative. According to them, the plane was full. Every seat was taken on the way down. Now, some people wore masks, some didn't, but they were sitting all side by side. On the way back, members, according to my relative who just returned last week, the same plane or a similar plane was completely full. Everybody sitting side by side, some people with masks, some without, members. Members, we can open our churches in a safe and a responsible way, along with our businesses. And members, we can do this on a bipartisan basis. I know this is a tough situation, but the data has changed. So I urge you, members, to let's work together to open the economy and our religious institutions. You know, members, you may have differing opinions about myself, but let me just share a WCCO interview by Dr. Michael Osterholm. Most of you know who Dr. Michael Osterholm is. He's a world-renowned infectious disease expert. And in that interview, he says this about cloth masks. He says they don't stand up to the virus aerosol. So you go on and read the article, they might make you feel good, okay, members? But they don't really work. That's the point, okay? The other thing is we need to protect our most vulnerable, where the deaths are occurring. Over 80% are occurring in the nursing homes. And another 19%, according to the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Health, of deaths, which are all tragic, occur with people with underlying health problems. We need to work with those people and protect them. But if you're healthy members, the quickest way to bring about an end to this is herd immunity. Keeping healthy people locked up in their houses weakens their immune system, medical experts say. Do your research. So members, let's take a step in the right direction. Let's work with Governor Walz, and I want to work with you on the bipartisan basis, and let's start opening this economy. I think it's ready to be opened based on the data. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
Further discussion to the Miller motion. Representative Winkler.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, members, I would encourage a no vote. The bill brought forward by Representative Miller simply restates the constitutional protections that already exist. There's an ongoing lawsuit, I believe, if somebody wants to join in as a party to challenge the existing stay-at-home order. So this is already being litigated under the current standards we have in the Constitution, and this bill would do nothing.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the words of Majority Leader Winkler. I wasn't writing them quick enough. I was more concerned about this area being sanitized, but generally what I think he said was, this just restates the Constitution. Listen to those words, members. Our Constitution already affords these rights that the governor cannot take away from people of faith. I hope the governor's listening. I hope that people of faith, leaders of churches, leaders of synagogues, leaders of whatever faith you may be are listening to this. Take your rightful place of authority on this. I think there's kind of a difficulty and a challenge in that people of faith by nature follow an authority. We believe that there's a creator, so there's a natural fit there. And in all faiths, we talk about respecting those people that are put in authority. The Bible is very clear on that. So I'm not asking for you to find ways to be combative. I'm not trying to find ways for you to disrespect the government that was placed in there. But I am asking you, leaders of faith, to be bold and go to the governor and let him know that this is not his authority. Letting your legislators know this is not their authority. This is very, very concerning to me, members, that we can say because there's a big enough problem that we are going to forget the fundamental principle that brought the Pilgrims over here, the fundamental thing that our nation was built on, that the state was not going to tell people how they should worship. Thank you for your time, members, and I ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion on the Miller motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion does not prevail. The bill will not be recalled from committee. Announcements. Representative Dowd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the Majority Leader could yield and just give us an idea of what the week looks like, timing, when we can expect to be here for session, that sort of thing, maybe even what bills are coming up.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, Representative Dowd, we will be coming back in tomorrow at 1:30, and our general intention, our goal is to bring members back in the afternoon for bill consideration and not to have to come in and take a break like we would typically do at the end of session. And as far as the calendar, I think we've set that for the next 2 days, and we don't have another calendar to announce yet for Thursday.
Any further announcements? Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 1:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 12, 2020.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 1:30 Tuesday, May 12, 2020. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 12, 2020.